Hi all, I have a very complex but notable game to show you, which actually I've been putting off and off. It was from an immortal game list by Moonlit Knight on ChessGames.com. At the time of the game, Vladimir Kramnik described it as 23rd century chess. Previous to this encounter, and the encounter was between Vishy Anand playing white and Veselin Topalov playing black. It was in the MTel Masters in Bulgaria, 2005. But previous to this encounter in Linares, Anand had beaten Topalov in the same sort of line, but the Bulgarian had used it to beat Kramnik at Chorus earlier in the year, and had analysed it with Ivan Shaporanov, who used it against Rodrigo Guerrero in Dos Hermas. So a very interesting theoretical debate around this. Let's see what happened. So Vishy Anand playing white, MTel Masters 2005. We have Topalov playing black, playing Sicilian defense. So we have this Najdorf, ultra sharp Najdorf. Okay, so a6, bishop e3, e6, and now f3. This has been used a lot by English grandmasters like Adams and others with great success as well. b5, g4, h6, queen d2, and now black plays b4. And usually, most often the knight goes here. This is a very interesting alternative to put the knight on the rim. They say a knight on the rim is dim, and there are some possibilities for black, of course, to attack this knight on a4, but this has been played quite a bit actually. Knight a4, knight bd7, white castles, and it looks as though queen takes b4 might be a possibility, but black kind of ignores that. He's going to get some counterplay on queen takes b4. Instead, in light of potential bishop d7 and queen a5 coming up as well, white actually secures the knight in advance with the move b3, which gives the knight an escape square to b2. It looks a little bit on the awkward side though. Taking on b4 though, instead of reinforcing the knight, I know that cuts out queen a5 and bishop d7, but maybe black plays just d5, hitting the queen, and black gets in play. So we see knight e5, b3, bishop d7, so black is challenging this knight on the rim, and it goes back immediately to b2. Now here, there's some nuances here already actually. If queen a5, I think white looks to have the resource here to play a4, because otherwise this looks quite vulnerable to use that pin. So it's not so easy to attack the white king here. Topalov plays d5, hitting the centre. And now we see bishop f4, and a very interesting move now from Topalov, very dynamic move. Perhaps, a sensible move like knight g6 is worth considering, but Topalov plays very interesting, knight takes f3, and I think both sides were joking, did you know what was going on? And I think Topalov said not a clue basically after this game, and basically yes, this game, the tone is set in this game after knight takes f3. What on earth is going on here? What is this? It's a knight sack for 2 pawns, but also, so it's taken and we get these 2 pawns. It's kind of awkward, this position, for white's king and this knight a little bit. If white's not careful, black will be playing queen a5 and looking at a2. Yeah, so he actually plays a very interesting move, Vishy Anand plays a very interesting move which keeps the pressure on the d file, which could be useful. He plays actually queen d4, and with the idea of bishop d3, this is also looking to tie down black on the king side a bit. So looking at g7, trying to discourage bishop c5. If we have a look at this position, the knight sack for 2 pawns, on queen e2, we do see it can be quite dangerous now, queen a5. So this sidestep move doesn't seem to do white many favours. So here, it's not particularly good, this position. Knight c4, trying to be resourceful, but a2. And black is crushing white here quite badly. This sort of position, black is on the rampage. You don't really want this with white. So this move here, queen d4, looks to be a much better idea. Because now, if queen a5, for example, bishop d3 takes, bishop takes e4. See, the queen's holding b2 knight as well here. This position's fine. And if knight c3 instead, here, queen takes, knight d1 looks to be sufficient to hold the position. And the queen might actually be quite useful potentially. Yeah, it's holding some key squares potentially. So, on queen d4 though, we have this move f6, which seems to parry the g7 pressure, and bishop c5 is on the cards. But there's a slight snag, isn't there now? Or is there? Well, is there a slight snag basically of this queen being on d4, bishop c5 incoming, and then queen a5, and isn't white on the back foot here? Well, Vishy Anand plays bishop d3 now. And it looks as though, isn't this just a horrific blunder? Hold on a sec. The queen hasn't got too many squares here. Isn't this end of game? What on earth is this move, bishop d3? So black plays bishop c5. Isn't the queen lost? Okay, remember, black has sacrificed a piece for 2 pawns. And looking forward, it seems in the background, to play something like queen a5 to hit white hard on the queen side. But the game goes into complete chaos now. Vishy Anand plays bishop takes e4. He's sacrificing his queen when he has to for 2 pieces. The queen's trapped anyway here. So bishop takes e4, bishop takes d4, bishop g6 check. So overall, from an accounting point of view, white now has 3 pieces for a queen, because remember, black sacrificed a piece earlier. So 3 pieces for a queen, and it looks so bishop d6 might be on. You might think, isn't there a fork here? Well, if black plays e5 to try and make it 2 pieces for the queen, then white can play rook takes and build up on d7 to forcibly win a piece back, to again be 3 pieces for the queen. So here, in a very complex position, black plays a5, trying to play for a4. Rook e1, trying to tempt black into e5 in fact. When just rook takes d5, and again that d7 issue. Bishop e8, challenging the bishop here. Knight h4, supporting the bishop. And look, black's pieces seem awkward actually as well, that rook on h8. The rooks are not connected. e5 though now is played, but it's pinned against the e8 bishop here. We see just rook d2 because it's pinned. a4, black is trying to desperately get some counterplay over here, knowing that his rook's kind of imprisoned over here. B takes a4, king g8, so it's not a fork at least. Maybe bishop takes g6 is on at some point. Bishop g3, white's not too bothered though. Where's the rook going to go? h7. Black plays d4. We have rook d3 now. d4 provides some space for black. Maybe, you know, moves like this. We have rook d3. Potentially now rook b3 is a resource. Useful. h5, trying to activate things over here. Now white takes on e8. Queen takes e8. And tries to undermine black's pawn chain now with g5. So it looks as though the 3 pieces are pretty good value at the moment. Rook c8. And now this rook is imprisoned in this position for the moment with g6. But Topalov tries to unimprison it and maybe sacrifice the exchange. But hasn't he let this pawn go? Rook takes d4. He has to do something about this rook. He plays rook takes g6. Knight takes g6, queen takes g6. So let's see. For the queen, white still seems to have 3 pieces now and is in good shape. I mean, numerically, let's ignore the pawns for a moment. 5, 10, 13, 16. Assume the queen's like 10, 5, 15. So numerically on the pieces, white's okay. On the pawns, it's about the same. Black's a pawn up. The queen's often given 9 though, 9. So anyway, here, yeah, black has some coordination. Rook d2 parrying the mate threat. Rook c3. Now we get into a very interesting phase of this very complex game. White plays rook ed1, king h7, king b1, queen f5, bishop e1, looking to harass that. Rook a3, looking to maybe play b3 to exploit the pin. Rook d6, rook h3. But white now tries to use this pawn with a5, and both sides now are emerging with passed pawns. Okay, so very complex position here. Black now creates a potential passed pawn, and looking at c2, rook c1 protecting c2, queen e4, and white now uses his passed pawn with a6, and queen a8 slowing down the passed pawn, trying to blockade or delay and trying to get this pawn going. Bishop takes b4, but white has spare pawns here now to start throwing at black. h4, bishop c5, looking at a7 potentially, h3, knight d3, rook d2. So looking at using this passed pawn, rook b6, h2, knight f2. So very tense position here, but with this pawn here I don't think black can afford to take here and try and get material simply. Instead, queen d5, bishop e3, rook e2, rook b3. Now black starts flinging some more pawns at white with f5, a7. Things are getting really dramatic now. Rook takes e3. What's the idea? Check to take this pawn. So it's queen versus 2 rooks and knight now. Now here, knight h1 was played. Possibly also if white wants to draw, in particular rook h3 check here, just to take on h2. We have knight h1 keeping more tension. f4, c4. White wants to fling his c pawn now. e4, 2 connected pass pawns. Ordinarily these are really dangerous. c5, e3, c6, e2, c7, queen takes c7. Black is getting back his queen here, so he's knocked out that passed c pawn now. In effect, rook c1, queen e4 check. But can the queen cope against 3 pieces? Mind you, this knight is pretty dim here, and black here decides to go for a perpetual. After all this, queen d4 check, queen e4, and a perpetual. In this final position, black's technically doing okay. Actually, you might think, let's put on a bit. Black's technically okay, and if white dared play king b2 here, queen g2 check, and black's got the chances here after g5. This is actually quite dangerous because this knight's pretty stranded. Now earlier, just to take a critical point earlier, where I mentioned about black queening the pawn by force if he wanted to. Here, instead of queen d5, if rook takes f2, this position here, this position here is just equal here. Just make sure of this position here. Apparently, very complicated. Here, black can play a move like queen f3 and queen a8. I think the point is, the pawn's not going anywhere. But if black does nothing like this, then it should be dynamic equality. Very complicated positions. Maybe actually check is better. If we reach this position, then black's going to get a perpetual check. Very, very complex variations. That's why I don't think both sides totally were like enjoying the positions, but they were really, really complicated here. But yeah, this knight h1 move coming up as well. So was interesting as well as another highlight. After this, in this position coming up here, well, we get this position, knight h1, rook h3 check. Apparently this is a way of securing a drawish position, because here queen e3, black's kind of getting a perpetual in this position. So it's like Vishy turned down this possibility of a perpetual, like trying to play for a win instead. So that's an interesting point of note, because if the king tries to escape over here, well, there's a lot of checks. So yeah, both sides actually showed great resolve for a fighting game. So rook h3 check is a kind of bailout for a draw in effect, to take this pawn over here. So knight h1 was a fighting move. But yeah, it sort of, it seems as though black's pass pawns to get this queen versus two rooks and knights. This position here is actually more in black's favour than white's favour. In fact, here instead of queen e4 check, the engine does seem to think queen g1 stockfish. The f23 queen g1 might be quite dangerous actually for white potentially. It's still a complex position, but it's not incredibly clear. Maybe it's just a draw in fact, because there's a lot of checking opportunities. Okay, so yeah, a fascinating game, one which was on my backlist because I found it a bit too complex and I didn't really. Yeah, it's like both sides sacrificing dynamically all the time. First, the kind of positional, odd positional move, knight a4, for seemingly tempting a queenside attack from black. Then black played this knight sack for two pawns, which kind of also emphasised that dynamic. You know, it seemed like this stumbling knight. So this knight sack for two pawns, but then the queen stubbornly kept on the d file. So after f6 didn't move. There was a queen sack for two pieces, which was basically three pieces. Then there was an exchange sack later from Topalov to try and get his rook out. And then we have this scenario where these passed pawns exploding all the time. This pawn going to first a pawn, and then black's h pawn, and then white's c pawn, and we get this, you know, very interesting material differences from both sides. But with a stranded knight on h1, it looks as though black's fine here. Often it's the case that the two rooks are overwhelming a queen, but they need targets, and it needs to be simpler than this. Yeah, there's a lot going on with black's very dangerous h pawn, of course, here. So that balances things out. Very complex game. It was described as 23rd century chess, anyway, by Kramnik. It's one I've been meaning to do for quite a while. I hope you got something from it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.